VonAllen Sports.
When you take a quarterback down, when you sack a quarterback, do you say anything to him? Do you say, I'm coming back?
You know, Tom Brady, you start talking trash to him, he'll put 21 up on you fast.
I try to avoid those 300-pound guys, but I'm always the slowest guy on the field, so I've got to throw the ball as fast as I can. That requires some anticipation and using my brain.
It's a dangerous game. You've called it a scheduled car crash.
Yeah. Worse than a car crash. I was in a car crash, and it wasn't as bad as getting hit on the football field.
I don't think anybody can question Tom's toughness. I don't know who's ever done that. By who? Ryan Thompson, one of the toughest players in the league.
Got hurt handing the ball off to a running back. Really?
You don't believe it?
I don't believe it for 1 second. I think it's a non-story. It's bogus.
And Tom Brady, if you're listening, take off the skirt and put on some slacks. Toughen up.
Well, Brady in trouble. Here comes the rush, and here's the hit. And alive. What looked like a knockout hit by Nate Clemens.
We all hate the Patriots.
There's an institutional arrogance.
Tom Brady would be a bum in short.
I hate Tom Brady. No how. That's not good enough.
Deflated
Lance Armstrong without the bicycle.
We were hitting him so often and so fast from the beginning of that game. We're looking around like, okay, they're tricking us. When it's no better feeling as an athlete when you know you're dominating a team or some guy so much that you can look in his eye, you can tell he's like, I don't want to be here. And Brady never had that look.
Strahan said, I don't care what anybody says about Brady. We beat the hell out of him.
Absolutely.
And he did not complain once.
I absolutely admire Tom Brady. I mean, we hit him sometimes where it was like he's not getting up, and he just got up. To be able to stay in that game and do it, and he threw a ball in the fourth quarter to Randy Moss. The ball traveled like 75 yards or something like that, and that was right after Jay Alford had literally broke him in half. That whole tough label is warranted for sure.
Welcome back to another installment of the Brady Hates Saga. I hope you got a chance to watch episodes 1 through 6 and also Montana vs. Brady. If you want to rewatch them, they are both on playlist on my channel right here. We're very new here, so your subscription, your likes, and comments are greatly appreciated, and I will always answer. I value your opinions, and I don't ignore them.
I walk through my fields.
It's clear that over decades, the NFL has factored in more rules to protect players and open up the passing game. People automatically associate more rules with wussifying the league. Saying the NFL is now wussified is one of the most overused and tired points I ever hear regarding Brady. It's extremely short-sighted, sloppy, and lazy thinking to sum it up like that. If you're one of those middle-aged guys or older that clings to the mantra that, back in my day, it was harder to play quarterback, congratulations, you have become your parents. Every generation thinks their own era was better in every way. As we age, we start to think back to when we were young. We distort the actual events and the environment at the time. Even if it was not as good as we think, we somehow associate the past still with better times. Why? Because you're remembering when you were young. Most men remember being better at sports than they really were. We start our story of high school ball as a young up-and-comer with potential, but everyone doubted. And by the end of the story, we've morphed ourselves into the second coming of Joe Montana or Lawrence Taylor. And then to tie it up with a nice bow by saying, yep, I could have gone pro if I didn't get injured.
Yeah, you got my knee, got my ankle, got my foot, got my leg, got whatever.
And that's the go-to method of telling the story. Why? Because it means that them no longer being an athlete wasn't their fault. It was out of their control, not because they weren't good enough, and also because it can't be challenged and no one will ask you to prove it. And men do this exact thing when they tell stories of when they were young, watching their heroes play on TV. And not much is going to shake them from that thought. I admit, it's hard to not alter the details of the past. Our brain even does this when we don't ask for it. I remember being a kid watching the Houston Oilers lose a massive lead to the Bills in the playoffs. All these years, when I pictured watching the Oilers in my head, was a glorious display of perfection. The game in my memory was in perfect high definition. The passes were crisper, the catches were better, the running backs ran like magical unicorns, the kickers never missed, and the head coaches were manly men, always angry and expecting the best out of the players. Hell, even the commentators in my head were the best commentators of all time. So by the time I tell that story about watching the Buffalo Bills comeback, I had pulled up memories of it that aren't really true or accurate for the most part. It just seemed like it was that glorious. It seemed it was that perfect. But then I watched a documentary about the early 90s Oilers, and I was in shock. The broadcast was terrible. Grainy, wavy, bad coloring. The commentators sounded like they were doing funeral rites, not calling a game. Just everything about the game was different, significantly different. And it's not like I didn't know this already. I did, but it didn't matter. Whenever I reminisced, I defaulted back to the NFL was perfect, clean, polished, without scandals or cheating or anything else that could have tainted the NFL back then. But still, even with how spoiled we are today in viewing games, our memory makes the past seem pure and perfect. So that's the psychology behind fans of Montana or any other quarterback from the past.
You got
Now, regarding Brady and his career, people conveniently forget that Thomas played in two different eras. When he first came into the league, the NFL was actually getting more violent than it was in the 90s. This was known as the Headhunting Era. Players started using their entire bodies as projectiles, causing massive collisions that hurt not only their targets, but themselves, sometimes even fellow teammates. Because launching your body like a missile, you lose control the moment you leave your feet. The NFL was plagued by defenders wanting to make highlight reels on ESPN's segment, Jacked Up! I won't lie, I loved that segment. It was exciting and many times hilarious. And you're lying if you say you haven't laughed when seeing a player you don't like get jacked up on that show.
And the guys helping him off are saying to him, Terrence, you got jacked up!
But that was the era. That was what defense turned into. Less form tackles, more body missiles. Brady got his job from a big hit to Bledsoe while he was running out of bounds. That same exact play happened to Jared Goff in the Super Bowl, and it wasn't even flagged. If the quarterback leaves the pocket, the refs aren't going to be as protective of you unless you slide. There's a very distinct reason why the NFL has rules for the pocket. Because they expect a quarterback to not leave it. They expect a quarterback to be good enough to make the throws he needs to make. You start running around like a chicken with your head cut off, don't be surprised if you get lit up and there's no flag. Several times I have seen refs pick up the flag after throwing it because they realized the quarterback was running, which makes him vulnerable to any hit that a running back would be. You stay in the pocket as much as possible. The pocket has more or less been a safe zone for the quarterback for an extremely long time. It's not some new invention. Additionally, many of you like to think because a flag is thrown, that wussifies the league. I didn't realize a flag on the field reversed the damage already done. The hit is a hit, regardless. If it's flagged, okay, a few yards. Or at worst, a fine, which to these guys is like a speeding ticket. It's worth it to these guys to get a big hit on a quarterback and risk the penalty or fine.
Oh my goodness!
That's why they constantly do it. If you're a linebacker and you go through the season laying guys out, but you get flagged and fined for it, no one's going to remember the penalty yards. The league and its fans are going to remember you as a big hitter and a guy to be feared. And what does that translate to? Money. Guys can literally change their career fortunes by doing things like this. It's a mental thing, and these guys will take the risk to achieve the desired end result. How many of Aaron Rodgers' injuries happened while he was outside of the pocket? I bet Packers fans can answer that one. Now, already into the 80s and early 90s, cleaner tackles and hits on quarterbacks were emphasized. Guys were using less brute strength and instead mixed in skill and form to what they were doing. Remember, a clean tackle is beneficial to the guy doing it as well. Better form means less chance of injury for themselves. Those vicious hits on quarterbacks back in the 70s weren't free. Those came with a price. Don't think for 1 second that those hits did not hurt while giving them. Plus, most guys didn't want to be the guy who ends someone's career just for a sack. There is some decency in there as well. But I have a great example of skill, form, and strength all came together into one great hit on the quarterback. Keith McCant's hit on Dan Marino. And thank you to Keith for giving us this clip. Really appreciate it. Marino was very difficult to sack because he always had a way out. He was just too fast with his arm. Watch this get off by McCants. He timed this perfectly. He had an unimpeded shot on Marino. Dan was completely vulnerable. At this point, McCants could have done anything. He He could have gone helmet to helmet. He could have gone for his knees, but no. Surely putting the great Dan Marino out of the game and possibly the season is advantageous to your team, right? But what did Keith opt for? A clean hit. That's how it's done. You can see Marino's face. Now, I don't know what he's saying to Keith, and I probably should ask him, but I get the feeling Dan is thinking,
hey, where did you come from, man?
Now, this is just an example of even back then, it wasn't prison yard rules out there, people. The defenders still had accountability for what they did, and definitely class.
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton.
Brady's reading of defenses before the snap is already how he makes sure he's not hammered. He motions people, moves things around, points at defenders, exposing them, and he's one of the best ever at this. He will realign things to get extra protection from his tight ends. Now, I know you're going to say that that's a normal quarterback thing, but Brady does it at an exceptionally high level.
But the thing that stands out is all the pre-snap stuff that he does so well, and handling everything at the line of scrimmage and communicating stuff to his teammates and whatnot. So, I mean, he's light years ahead of everybody.
Then post-snap, he already has twice as much of a lead on the defense now than an average quarterback would have. But even added to that is his reaction time and his ability to assess the play so fast it's crazy.
Watch how much communication. Hey, I'm telling you guys, hey, the Amendole's like, what am I doing? He's pointing out the protection, who's blocking your Amendola. What am I doing? Yeah, no, let's do this here. Wait, in my pressure. Let's go ahead and run the in and out. And then he knows in the back of his head, I'm just going to buy time. Here we go, subtly, touchdown. Extra point.
He also can run anything you need him to. You can change your entire game plan during the game and Brady will run it efficiently. The average person wouldn't even notice because there would be no awkwardness or mistakes. Now don't get me wrong, I love 80s football, but I also have to be realistic here. Brady and Peyton in the 1980s would be absurd. The level of the defenses they faced in their career versus the ones in the 80s is much, much different. Quarterbacks also get hit nearly twice as much now as they did back then, because back then it was primarily a smash-mouth run game. D linemen, they weren't looking for the sack, they were looking for the tackle for loss or the strip on the running back. In fact, they didn't even start to keep up with the sacks by the defender himself until the 80s because it just wasn't a thing. Knowing what we know now of Brady and Peyton, had they been drafted to the 49ers by Bill Walsh in the 80s, you're looking at an entire decade of dominance, not just spaced out like it was. And that's not a slight against Joe. I'm just saying that this is how good these two are. We have been truly lucky to watch Tom and Peyton in the same era, and not only that, the same conference. It's too bad people can't just enjoy it as it was, instead of nitpicking constantly, things that probably were mostly wrong to begin with. But let's go even further. Let's give Peyton or Tom the 1970s Steelers. What happens? I hate constantly having to defend these guys all the time because it makes it sound like I hate the old guys and don't respect them. I do. It's just people's hatred and bad attitude towards the modern game demands this type of response. It's weird how Julius Peppers pegs Aaron Rodgers and delivers his helmet to helmet, but since there was a flag, apparently Aaron stopped hurting and his body healed instantly. Just like that. Here we go. This guy was flagged, so I guess Kim is just fine. They may flag people, but it doesn't stop these things from happening. Sometimes they happen by accident. I don't think Peppers was trying to go helmet on Aaron. Just sometimes things happen. Brady gets blamed for a lot of things that's not his fault. For example, this guy here believes the rules were changed in the early 2000s to benefit Brady. Well, that's not exactly what happened. The Patriots' aggression was the reason for the changes. It was Peyton Manning and the Colts who had that done. And afterwards, they magically won the Super Bowl. How strange, right? Nothing to do with Brady.
How about this? Jim Irsay sat in the competition committee and he changed the rules. He spearheaded changing the rules of coverage because he couldn't beat the Patriots' defense. And then his new rules shifted the advantage because they had a better offense than we had a defense. And within 2 years, they won a Super Bowl. Did we cry about it? We didn't. We just played by their rules.
He also gets blamed for the Brady rule. Hitting the quarterback in the legs became an issue after Carson Palmer was taken out in the playoffs, but it was Brady's injury that caused the competition committee to buckle down on it. It was the last straw, but the ball was already rolling on that. People see what they want to see, and they hear what they want to hear. It's human nature, but those who can get past that, they're the clever ones. And besides, is it Brady's fault or any other current quarterback's fault that the NFL has these rules? No. They have to play no matter what the NFL decides.
Listen to this. The Pittsburgh Steelers fan is selling this t-shirt for the Bernard Pollard fan club. On it is Brady's number 12 crossed out and the date the Pats QB was hurt. The shirts are selling for $18.99 each.
There's so many concepts of why Brady could play back then. It's just a lot of it is not something that most people think about. For one, Brady elevates his teammates. And not just Brady, but Peyton and Favre. All three of these guys have offensive linemen that would take a bullet for them. I loved Montana. I loved Marino, Elway, Kelly, all those guys. My idol growing up was Warren Moon. But I've seen the changes in the NFL, and somehow public perception has been skewed very badly. Was the NFL more brutal back in the 60s and 70s? Absolutely. The violence was afforded way more leeway. No one is disputing that.
Alex Smith got jacked up!
But the game had to evolve instead of it just being a blood sport. The UFC started out as a brutal street fight in a cage, basically. But in order to survive and become an actually respected sport, they had to implement rules that helped keep the best competitors in the game. Besides, what you complain about isn't really what you want. You claim that you want the quarterbacks to be knocked out like in the 70s, but the numbers say otherwise. Ratings in the playoffs and the Super Bowl suffer greatly when there are no marquee quarterbacks. So some of you are evidently not watching as much when backup quarterbacks are leading the teams. And that's exactly what you would have on every team and in every position if you didn't have some type of common sense rules in place. Check this out. I remember championship weekend in 2018. It was for the 2017 season. All we heard were complaints about no good quarterbacks except Brady being in it. No one wanted to see Foles and Keenum and Bortles in a championship game. And the ratings further proved that. Since 2010, that weekend was the worst in ratings. That's not a coincidence. I then did a VonAllen Sports ranking by giving each quarterback an assigned number based on their ability and value to bring in bigger audiences because of their star power. 1 is the player that leaves most of the nation going, who? A 2 is a player who's known but has no following outside of his team's market. A 3 is a famous player but he plays for a niche market. 4, he's famous and or he plays for a legacy team. And 5, the elite. Can carry an audience anywhere, anytime. So let's take a look. The overall quarterback rating score is generally consistent with the actual television ratings. Number 1, championship weekend of 2014, 49ers versus Seahawks. That was Colin Kaepernick versus Russell Wilson. I gave Cap a 4. He was famous, he was a rising star, but because he played for the 49ers, gives him a 4. Russell Wilson, same thing as Cap, a rising star, but he played for Seattle. That's kind of just, they're over there in their corner pocket of the country. Pats versus Broncos. This was the real one that carried the day. Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. Both 5s. Quarterback rating of 17. They averaged 53.6 million viewers. It's not a coincidence that Brady and Manning were on the highest rated weekend. Let's jump to the worst. 2002. The Eagles against the Rams. Donovan McNabb was a 1, basically, and Kurt Warner at that time was a 3. Yeah, people knew him, but he wasn't a box office draw. And then you had the Patriots Steelers. At this time, Brady was a 1 himself. I know, hard to believe, but it's true. And Cordell Stewart, a 3. And I only give him that because he played for the Steelers. That gives you a quarterback ranking of 8. The average amount of viewers was 35 million. So there you go. And everything else is consistent, like the next worst is 2006 when Roethlisberger played Jake Plummer and Jake Delhomme played Matt Hasselbeck. See what I mean? It's just pathetic. That was a quarterback rating of a 7. And the Super Bowl, essentially the same thing. The highest rated Super Bowl, Super Bowl 49. Tom Brady versus Russell Wilson. Second highest rated, Peyton versus Cam Newton. Third highest, Brady again versus Matt Ryan, the MVP. Fourth, Peyton versus Russell Wilson. Fifth, Brady versus Eli Manning, who happens to also play for the New York Giants. Huge market. 5th, Aaron Rodgers. He's a 5 already, but he plays for the Packers. And Big Ben, he's a 4. He already had 2 Super Bowl rings and he plays for the Steelers. See, these are big matchups. But you go down to the worst matchups. Look who the worst is. Super Bowl 35, Trent Dilfer versus Kerry Collins. Even though Collins played for the New York Giants, it still was a travesty. I gave him a quarterback rating of a 2. Now, if we gave Aaron Donald a free ride to a quarterback's head every sack, Super Bowls would look like Super Bowl 35, Dilfer versus Collins, with terrible ratings. But of course, I know this won't make you rethink your position. I'm just trying to point out that what you wish for isn't exactly what you want. You just complain when it doesn't help your situation. For example, I hear Max Kellerman make an excuse why he was wrong on the Brady cliff because he didn't expect the rules to change so Brady could play forever.
I have to revise my cliff. What had happened was...
What had happened at first was...
What had happened was...
What had happened was...
I didn't know that they'd be playing flag football in 2018. Because that's what's happening.
How strange that I've never heard that mentioned when he's talking about Aaron Rodgers and his constant injuries.
We need you to be Aaron Rodgers. He will not be because he's never had the rest.
If the NFL is so pansy-fied, then what does that make his hero Aaron Rodgers?
You think this hit was dirty?
Absolutely. He drove him into the turf using his weight.
Was the hit on Rodgers a dirty play?
Absolutely not. Barr was within a step of Aaron Rodgers. Once Aaron Rodgers leaves the pocket, Skip, he's afforded no more protection. He's a runner. He is to be treated like Cam Newton. He is to be treated like all the other running quarterbacks.
Because Rodgers wasn't protected from himself.
I guess he's saying Rodgers is weaker than Brady, right? But hey, whatever it takes to not have to admit when you're wrong, I guess. We begin with an interesting comment left by VonAllen Sports subscriber Carl Hudson. From 1987 to now, the average weight of the largest defensive tackles in 1987 was 286 pounds. In 2018, 318. That's 32 pounds more crushing down on a quarterback. That kind of weight could be the difference between a broken collarbone, broken arm, neck, or concussion. What's even stranger is that the speed times didn't suffer that badly despite the weight gain. For defensive ends, between 1987 to 1994, the best times each year averages out to 4.69. Between 2012 to 2019, it was 4.53. This is very important when the difference between a quarterback getting the pass out of his hand to having it knocked out of his hand is fractions of a second. Speed time differential like that can mean how many sacks you get and if you're considered elite or not. And their average weight is increased, but they got faster? This is from better conditioning, more technology being introduced into workouts, better supplements. It's basic evolution of an athlete. And it's actually probably not a stretch to say that a modern defender in the top 30 could have been top 15 in the 1980s. But putting Brady exactly as he's been his entire career into the 1980s, like Carl said, I doubt they would even get to Brady in time to even justify a big hit after the ball had left them. And yes, back then, they did have roughing the passer calls as well.
Personal foul, roughing the passer, number 40 defense.
I throw the ball, and the biggest thing is I know the guy behind the camera right there is not very far away, but he can hit me still after I throw it.
You can't lower the shoulder and hit the guy in the back like that.
No question. Roughing the passer, number 40 defense.
But if you watch the Patriots-Rams Super Bowl, you can clearly see that they hit both quarterbacks after the pass was thrown and there were no flags. Remember, and I will remind you of this throughout the video, this is only to show that the idea of saying Brady or any other modern quarterback couldn't play back in the day is flawed to its core. It's to show that the natural ability and intangibles of Brady and other modern quarterbacks would do just fine back then. At the same time, Guys like Marino would have thrived in the modern game as well. The things that made these guys great quarterbacks was something inside of them. Whatever era you're elite in, you would have probably been something special in any other.
Please, Father Time, kill Mother Nature.
In the Super Bowl, Aaron Donald threw Brady down to the ground, which was unnecessary since he already grabbed him and Tom got rid of the ball. But no flag, just good football. Here's J.J. Watt blasting Brady, and he even hits his head on his own teammate. That was a concussion waiting to happen. Brady, by the way, threw a touchdown pass on his play. If Aaron Rodgers had done that, it would have been the greatest thing that's ever been done. If Montana had done that, oh my God, it's legendary. You got Von Miller here taking an obvious extra shot at Tom for no apparent reason. What did Tom do? Dusted himself off, got back up, and enjoyed the penalty yards. And these hits by Miller suck even worse because it's cold. Now, here, Brady just disappears. It's like the earth just opened up and swallowed him.
Earth just opens up and swallows them. Eerie. Really eerie.
I don't think Joe Flacco thinks that this was wussy ball either.
Oh, so much the same thing doesn't keep our restraint on the ones we used to love and on the ones we used to hate. I've got it now, I finally got it now. Family isn't what you thought, but it will be who you can bet.
But watch Breeze here get completely smashed. And you know what? He's not even as big as Brady or Montana.
It's a tough call because right here is the game, essentially.
Football is always going to be a violent game. There's no way around this. But it doesn't mean we have to have these guys getting brain damage every game just so you can scratch yourselves on the couch with Doritos hanging out of your mouth yelling, "That's some smash mouth football right there." I'd rather see the best of the best out there getting hit legally. A clean hit is just as exciting. I will admit, the rules for the quarterbacks the last few years have been getting too restrictive. Even Brady, Rodgers, and Breeze all have spoken out about this. I think the NFL from 2000 to 2010 was just about perfect. It was the right mixture for everyone to be satisfied. But to call these current quarterbacks pansies or wussies or whatever else you want to call them, it's just downright disrespectful and most of all, completely ignorant.
If you had to compare him to any other GOAT in any other sport, it had to be like Michael Jordan or so.
Montana took some hard shots during his career, no doubt. But so did Marino, Elway, Warren Moon, Jim Kelly, and others. This is no disrespect to Joe, I'm just saying since Joe got hurt a lot, the mythology today seemed to associate that with violence that Brady somehow couldn't handle. It's bizarre how people would connect that, but that is literally the thinking process. The problem with that is Montana's contemporaries didn't have as much of a problem staying on the field. But Joe getting hurt often, or any quarterback getting hurt often, has a lot to do with luck and natural God-given ability to withstand a hit better than others. It doesn't mean one guy is a pansy and the other isn't. If Lawrence Taylor hits Joe Theismann an inch in a different direction, maybe Theismann only gets a sprained knee or a bad bone bruise. This is the luck part of it. It doesn't mean Theismann isn't tough because he got taken out. And don't pretend that in the 80s they were trying to murder each other. After that play, you saw LT sincerely horrified by what he had done, calling for help. He was all class. He wasn't trying to end Joe. He was just wanting the sack. Another thing you have to look at is back when the West Coast offense was becoming popular, it was labeled as pansified. It was considered all grace and no muscle.
Finesse-ass 49ers will come in the backyard of the Bears and kick ass.
Most considered it a gimmick that would eventually fade away. People have been saying the same things you do for decades.
Faded, jaded, frustrated, degraded, downgraded, traded, all in a day. Command, stand.
Now take a look at this hit here on Montana. I've seen this many times on modern quarterbacks. It's a vicious hit. If this hit doesn't end your career, then you are tough. Losing the ball as well doesn't really matter when you take a hit like that. And it doesn't matter the era. Joe is 6'2", 205, getting smashed by Leonard Marshall, who's 6'3" and 288 pounds. Joe's going to be on the losing side of this one every time. Now you can see here, Von Miller and Derek Wolfe are both closing in on Brady. But Brady is completely screwed here. Why? Because his body has nowhere to go after the hit. The same hit as Montana, but Tom, after the hit, was smashed into another Broncos defender head first. Tom got a double whammy on that one. I remember this hit live. I thought surely Tom is not getting up from that one. Tom is 6'4", 225 pounds. He got smashed by Von Miller, who was 6'3", 250, and Derek Wolfe, who's 6'5", 285. Not only did Brady get back up, but he engineered one of his most famous comebacks in that game against Peyton Manning. But to say he couldn't handle it is just absolute idiocy. Take a look at this one. It's a clean hit. Again, this hit done right now on Brady would be completely legal. It's just Joe's misfortune that he landed awkwardly. Seems he injured his shoulder or collarbone, like Madden said. But as he's walking out, he looks concussed.
Maybe it wasn't the shoulder. Maybe he was knocked out.
We never see his head hit the ground, so maybe just the impact itself jarred his brain a bit. After all, our brain is just floating around independently in our skull.
A human brain sits in a fluid, completely disconnected from the human skull.
Straighten you up.
How you been?
Life's good.
Don't mind me if I'm yelling at you.
No, I'll take it all good.
I yell at you, nothing personal. I just, you know me, I'm a competitive.
Who's 88? I gotta know. I just gotta know. Who's official 88? He sucked. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be straightforward. He was terrible, and I feel like he should be reprimanded.
Brady is a pansy because he cries for a flag after he gets hit. Wait a minute. You think Brady is doing that because he's not tough? You really haven't thought this through, have you? Brady is doing that to get his team a benefit. The game today is all about quarterback protection, and Brady knows the refs will respond accordingly. He's taking advantage of every strategic possibility available to him. It has nothing to do with toughness. That's just stupid to think. He wants that first down, and he will say anything to get it. I certainly hope my quarterback would do whatever it took to keep our drive going. Brady is good at making the right argument, and the refs respond out of respect. Quite a bit. Keep in mind also that the more a player is respectful to the refs and doesn't spend time in press conferences selling them out, the more likely you're going to get the call. Now, I know it shouldn't be like that, and the refs should just do their job no matter what, but the refs are human. They're not robots.
You guys do our San Diego game last year?
Joe, I can't remember where I worked last week.
You can't remember what?
Where I worked last week.
Oh, you're getting old, huh?
So, for example, let's say a ref who Cam Newton completely destroyed in public. They might just let Cam take a huge blow in the next game. I'm not saying it's right or fair, but that's the human element and the aspect of it.
I don't know. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's really taking the fun out of the game for me. Honestly, it really is, because at times I don't even feel safe. Right, and enough is enough, you know.
Brady understands this. If you notice, Tom is always talking to the refs before the game, shaking their hands, using small talk. Guys, this is psychological warfare, okay? This is psychological technique. I know all you guys say, oh, well, look at him, it's rigged, it's blah, 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 you know, whatever, because look, Brady's in good with the refs. Come on. Remind the refs that you're a good dude and likable. The more the refs see you as a cool, respectful guy, the more likely that they will find the sight of you getting plowed to the ground very disturbing, and they'll find it very uncomfortable. And then guess what happens? Out comes the flag. But a quarterback who's not like that, well...
Mr. Fisher, how old are you? What's about 13 out here?
The refs just see you for what you appear to be, an overpaid jock with no personal ties to them. It's gamesmanship, people. Nothing to do with toughness or lack thereof. For Brady, the game starts way before kickoff and continues even after the clock strikes all zeros. If Joe was playing now, he would do exactly what Tom does, because Joe is also that type of guy. He knew how to exploit situations. Listen to these penalty statistics. Now, we're going to use 1995 as our source because this is the farthest I can go back to get accurate penalty statistics for each one. But 1995 was not that much different in the way the game was played than the mid to late 80s. So it gives us a fair gauge, at least, of how it kind of was and what the differences are. I truly wish I had older data. I like to be as accurate as possible, and I don't like to guess, but this is the oldest we've got. So in 1995, holding, offensive holding, was called 562 times. In the year 2011, the year Brady lost Super Bowl 46, it was called 601 times. Wow, not a huge increase at all. In 1995, pass interference was called 258 times. Check this out. In 2018, okay, this last season, the year Brady won Super Bowl 53, when it was supposed to be this flag football, watered down game, pass interference was only called 237 times. 21 times less after 23 years. Holy crap. In 1995, roughing the passer was called 45 times. In 2016, when Brady won Super Bowl 51, it was called only 85 times. That's strange. It's not that big of a difference as you would expect, huh? In 1995, unnecessary roughness was called 100 times. In 2007, when Brady lost Super Bowl 42, it was called only 127 times. So, these all span different eras of Brady's career, clearly showing you it's not what you think. And there was no need to count his early Super Bowls from 01 to 04 because it was very similar to the 90s. Now, I hope this at least helps you realize that the NFL, as far as impact and trauma to players on the field, has not been wussified. The league just doesn't want their players not knowing their grandchildren's names. No matter what, concussions are going to happen, and violent collisions will too. A clean, legal tackle can break ribs, cause heads to bounce off the turf, rupture discs, lacerate internal organs, cause internal bleeding, whiplash, spinal trauma, and all kinds of things. Wow, that's from a legal, clean hit. So maybe they're throwing a flag on a knee strike or a helmet to helmet. Okay. The one area I agree with you is that some of the roughing the passer calls now are as simple as touching a quarterback's face mask. That, I agree, is absurd. But that alone doesn't undermine everything else. You have to remember also, technique is much better, causing less injuries. Helmets are better. Equipment is designed to take pressure, to absorb the hits better. New techniques in working out and eating right makes injuries less as traumatic, and technological advances in recovery times, there's so much to take into account. But most guys sitting on their couch reminiscing about the violent days of the NFL, I don't think give it that much thought, but they should. At least before they start trashing guys like Brady and questioning his toughness.
Check this out.
I'm pretty sure what's happening to Peyton here would be considered sexual assault anywhere outside of a football stadium. What's this? Kill the head and the body will die? Remember this guy? Despite what the media and the NFL will have you to believe, Greg Williams wasn't some lone nut job coach who just had a weird fetish with ending players' careers. The NFL just wanted to make an example out of him. The truth is the NFL has always been littered with Greg Williams types. That's just football, people. This wasn't happening during some obscure era. This happened right in the middle of Brady's career. But a lot of you think that this is football now.
Open, get open. Get your head out of your ass. You suck.
I bet you Eli Manning doesn't think this is funny. And this was just preseason. Eli, he's never missed a game to injury. Remember in Super Bowl 50 when everyone made fun of Cam because he didn't go into the scrum for the fumbled ball? Yeah, his toughness was brought into question. His courage and desire to win was also questioned from that one play. Here is that same thing with Brady when he loses the ball. But look, no hesitation whatsoever. He went for it. But let me guess, no props, right? Okay, well let's ask Von Miller what he thinks about Tom. This is Von Miller talking about that brutal hit Brady took from Elvis Dumervil. If you're a Patriots or a Broncos fan, I'm certain you remember this. But for the rest of you, watch this. And now we have DeMarcus Ware talking about Brady. Now I love Ware's story, especially because he's like, man, I got it. I got a free lane. Tom didn't notice me. He messed up. This is my play. I got him. Yes. And then suddenly Brady points right at me and yells, Where? Damn it, Tom. Man, dang it. Marcus continued, we sacked Tom 4 times and hit him 20 times. 20 freaking times. Every time we hit him, he got back up. We hit Tom more times than any quarterback in a game that season, and he still had his team a 2-point conversion away from tying the game late in the 4th quarter. The dude is relentless. Everybody knows what Brady can do with the football. He has great arm strength. He's accurate. He throws a great deep ball. But man, can he take a hit. Like 20 of them.
We made too many compromises already. Too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
Okay, well if this testimony from DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller doesn't sell you that Brady is tough and could survive back in the 80s, then this is what you are.
You're just a hater, and shame on you.
I wanted him to lose, but he the man. I mean, I ain't gonna be no hater. He's a man. He's good.
And how could you not? You know, he's the greatest of all time.
The best player in the National Football League is Tom Brady. I tried to come up with a guy that I could pick in front of him, but if I did that, I would be a hater, and that is not me. Tom Brady, number 1.
I want to thank you guys for consistently commenting, liking the things you say. Even if you have a different opinion, you don't agree with me, I appreciate your input. Thank you so much. And make sure to subscribe so, of course, you get alerted when the new videos come. And be sure to go to our playlist and check out the first 6 episodes of the Brady Hate Saga and also Montana vs. Brady if you didn't get a chance to see those. I'll close you out with this.
to Adams.
And they're asking for help right away.
That looked bad. Let's just hope he's okay.
VonAllen Sports.